Hey, Ross Kennedy here with Kennedy Home Inspections. Today I am doing a pre-drywall inspection in a community that I have done probably 20 some inspections for in the past. Become quite familiar with this builder, and I guess they've become quite familiar with me because it's a unique situation whereby the occupants or the residents of this community are part of a tight community, an ethnic community that has all met. They don't all work together or know each other, but they meet and they talk about these inspections. This particular builder allows the buyer to come to my inspections. Personally, I'm not a big fan of that on pre-drywall inspections because there's a number of ways you can get hurt during these. And it's a very technical inspection, and I don't really know where the legal line between my business and the builder stops if they allow the buyers to show up. In fact, a lot of builders won't allow me to come unless I've signed a hold harmless, I wear a helmet, so forth. But this builder particularly is not all that risky, or doesn't mind the risk taking. So here we go. Little tip: if you're going to be doing a pre-drywall inspection, bring a second set of boots. I had my marrows completely buried in mud once, and I learned the lesson the hard way. Important thing to remember every time you do a pre-drywall inspection or a construction inspection is that you're going to be coming into the house in various stages of its construction. So you don't want to come in there assuming that the builder's not going to be doing something, but you do have to be the reminder in case it may not get done. Let me show you what I mean by this example on the side here. According to the manufacturer's specifications, Kingspan Green Guard requires a nail that has a cap on it to affix it to the wall, but however, staples are not appropriate. Now the staples though are a temporary hold, but should not be considered the final fastener to hold this building wrap air barrier onto the house. So we would just write it up to ensure that the builder, of course, is aware of that, and that they would be applying the proper fasteners to hold the material according to the manufacturer's specifications. And again, there's the assumption that these things are going to get done by the builder, but you don't want to assume, so you put it in your report to make sure that things like no ladder inside its egress window or a cover, or that it's been affixed to the foundation wall properly, are all noted. What is not customary on a pre-drywall inspection or a new construction is a courtesy to the builder to not walk the roof when it has brand new shingles. So you would do the best you can to see it with a ladder, to see it with a drone, to see it with binoculars, and to look at everything that you can possibly see from the top side, of course ensuring that you've double checked everything from the attic side as well. Now these homes will have home warranties most likely associated with them, so at least you've got the coverage there that if you could not walk the surface, which you shouldn't, that the builder is going to cover that roof and other things in the home for a year. You can see here this portion of the roof is not covered by a house wrap or any flashing of any kind or capping. And often you'll get the benefit of doing these type of inspections by simply just looking at another home and seeing what's intended to be there. So you can see that there's a metal roof that's intended to be in that section of this home as well. If you didn't know that already, at least you'd have the benefit of looking elsewhere in this community to see that kind of thing, to inform you of what's intended to go there, what kind of flashing should be there, what kind of capping, and any house wrap that might be missing to put into your report. So one of the things you might see as we go through this property is going to be light coming in through walls, and I can show you an example of that later. But the reason for that is because none of the fire stop caulking has been put in. In fact, the guys are here in the truck waiting, I think having a little lunch. They're going to come in and get started on that today. Usually that's done or almost done by the time I do a pre-drywall inspection. I'd like to see that it's done completely. In this case, none of it's been done, so I might have to come back to double check on that. So here's an example of where you're going to see open gaps to the outside that they're going to come in and caulk. And you'll see that in all kinds of locations, including all the light coming in. See if I can grab it. You can see the light coming in there and up in here. All of these spaces that you see light coming in will be fire stopped, or at least we hope so. Now, at least my process is to do these type of inspections in the same order that I would be doing a home inspection. And that means that I would start on the roof, the outside, and then continue down into the basement. Something else that's good to note is the squash blocks. You can see the 2x4s that have been added at these TJI joists because there's a weight load bearing on this ceiling, which I'm in the basement, and above this is enough down pressure on these TJIs that squash blocks were appropriately applied as needed on top of the steel I-beam. We're still in an unfinished area of the basement, which is a large portion of it, so there may be a time when this area would want to get finished. And one of the things we're looking at through all the houses are there proper nail plates where they're needed on the studs to protect wires and pipes. So they had to make a little cut here. It must have been a mistake or an added, well, it was an added stud for the Ethernet box and cable box and so forth. So they added the stud after the wire, which means they notched it out to get the wire in. If they're ever going to put drywall on this side, they're definitely going to need a nail plate here because there's less than an inch and a quarter between the face and the wire. So that's where we would request a nail plate in our report. So starting in the garage, you're going to notice the footer here, which is a pressure treated lumber, 2x6. And at the very outset, we noticed that there's an anchor bolt that has been applied too close to the stud or the stud too close to it, and there is no washer or nut on that anchor bolt. That would be required. It should look like this. So now we're up on the first floor near the kitchen, and you'll see here that they did put nail plates in because the opening and the front face are less than 1.25 inches wide. However, what they really didn't account for is that you're going to be putting in possibly up to 3/4 inch flooring and underlayment and so forth on this, which raises up the floor, and then you're going to put in maybe 6-inch trim here possibly, which means nails could be entering in above this footer and possibly clip those wires. So really what's recommended at this point would be to add a nail plate that looks more like this. And another missing nail plate very close to the edge. So one of the things that plumbers do is they apply these PEX directly to the studs inside the shower walls or bath walls. And there's flex in this. Now it's been secured up top and it's been secured on the bottom. However, the flex has caused it to move closer to the front of the stud. Now, a proper drywaller will not hit that, but you're gonna get these guys going quickly. See how this one even comes out in front of the stud? And if you have one errant screw that just sort of gets in at an angle, I mean, the reality is I've been in one of these properties that was finished, and when I was testing the master bath shower, it rained into the garage because a drywaller had sent a screw through the PEX tubing supply line. So my recommendation is to not have the plumber apply these PEX things so close to the fronts of the studs. Why not just put them back here? I know there's going to be insulation, but there's enough room to get it away from the nail. I mean, we're only asking for 1.25 inches. Something I like to do as I go through each room of the property is to see if there are these nailers. So there's a 2x4 running along this edge. You got to think like a drywaller when you're looking at this. Where's the drywaller going to apply the drywall screws? If they didn't have that nailer, that 2x4 added to the edge of this kitchen wall, he would stick his drywall sheet up and send screws into nowhere, and there would be a movement in the drywall and too much flux in it, and the tape would crack and all that. So everywhere I go, I look, is there a place for the drywaller to be able to nail to or screw into? I also look at these TJIs because even though they can run long spans, there might be a little jounce in them and a little bit of movement. But they can also twist. So did they put proper blocking in where necessary to keep the twist out of these long runs of TJIs? And in this case, they did. Proper seal tape is essential. This is a higher quality seal tape that I've seen this builder use, that they use on the sills of these windows. Of course, it goes all the way out to the outside, and that is to ensure that water penetration does not get into the interior structure. So one of the things that this builder improved upon was the location of the supply and return vents. At one point, they were putting them within a few inches of each other, or maybe a foot or two, which standards are to keep them at least 10 feet apart, preferably to have the return vent on the inside wall and the supply vent on the exterior wall.
But we've made some progress, and a bunch of the buyers have gotten together to talk to the builder about it. And what I've seen is basically somewhat of an improvement in all the bedrooms, separating the return and supply vents. So the best we can, we look at the ductwork now to see if it's been suspended properly using wide straps that's not creasing the tubes, restricting airflow. Did they use proper angles of the tubes? And, did they flash it properly and tape it well? So anytime you see a non-load bearing 2x4 that's had more than 60% bored out of it, you need to either sister that stud or put in what are called stud shoes. And this particular builder misses them quite a bit, so I catch these in most of the bathrooms and laundry rooms of this house. So it's pretty common to have a builder have to go back and cut up subfloor to get to something that they either forgot to do or got out of order or what have you. The problem is when they cut a subfloor 4x8 sheet in the middle, you need to really replace the entire sheet because these are meant to be interlocking sheets for the strength and stability of the subfloor to hold down the main finished floor so that there's not any softness or squeaking in the future. So I would always recommend that if any of these 4x8 sheets have been cut, that the entire sheet be replaced. So I've seen other guys on videos say that you should look at the truss plans to see whether or not they spaced them properly. Did they use the codes according to the written plans for the pack of the house? And I've never actually seen plans on site. The ones I have seen are ripped up, stepped on, torn apart, lying around. So the best we can do at this point, if we don't have a set of plans, is to look and see if any of the trusses have been cut improperly, which would need an engineer's sign-off to repair. Are the gusset plates that hold the cords of these trusses together intact and secure, not bent or missing? You're looking at the roof deck to see if the locking clips between the different sheathing on the deck have been applied and that there's no bowing or scalloping of the wood. Of course, you're looking for leaks, and if they haven't finished putting the boots around vent stacks on the roof and that type of thing. Okay, back in the car again. Inspection is over. Turns out the buyer did come. And I'm not so worried about my liability because they came to meet the foreman and to be given a walkthrough of the property. Now, what worried me is that the foreman left and then they were kind of under my care and they had a young child with them, which honestly they were not watching all that carefully. And second floor open studs down to the first floor drop, not a cool thing. Anyway, so, my inspector and parent eyes are doing this peripherally, but we got through it. Nobody got hurt, and it was the builder who allowed them to come, so I think we're in good shape. In the end, I believe the inspection went well. I think one thing that has to happen often with these type of inspections is that you have to impart information carefully for people who are a little nervous. They're spending a lot of money for these houses, and they're also looking at things they've never seen before. In particular, you would look at a stud wall and think, well, why is there a chip off the edge of one of the studs? And, depending on where it's being used, 9 times out of 10, that stud is going to be perfectly fine for what it's being made for. But you do have to walk through buyers who've never been in a house in construction phase before and kind of give them a little bit of help on what matters and what doesn't. In the end, it all matters, but how much it matters is kind of the key. But you walk them through the technical aspects of the inspection as best you can, but in the end, you know that you're there to do a job that even if they don't understand, you need to. And then once you find something, you have to give that information carefully to them. Now, the thing about giving information at this phase is the builder may be very aware of it. They may have not gotten to it yet. They may have an explanation for why some things are the way they are. But in the end, you don't accuse, like I've said before, you inform. And if the builder has an explanation, great. If they don't, somebody needs to provide an explanation, whether that's in the form of an engineer's sign-off or the documents that show how in the plan for how a house should be built, and some proof that they did things the way they were supposed to do them. It'll be up to the seller the buyer to convince the builder to do some of the things that we've pulled out in the report, because frankly, we've noted these in the past for some of these
homes and they weren't fixed. And the builder said they weren't going to fix it. So in the end, I can do my job, but you know, the buyer has to decide how far they're going to take it with regard to what they're going to make the builder try to do. Anyway, I hope you learned something here today. See you next time.